Hi, my name is Jenny. I'm 35 years old, and I'm a proud mom to the sweetest 10-year-old twins, Jimmy and Emma. After my divorce 2 years ago, I moved in with my parents. At first, it felt like a blessing. Working 12-hour shifts as a pediatric nurse meant I desperately needed help, and they promised to support us. My relationship with them has always been complicated, but I was willing to make it work for my kids. But everything changed the day my brother Tom and his wife Melissa had their baby boy. From that moment on, Jimmy and Emma became invisible in my parents' eyes. What happened next broke my heart in ways I never imagined. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. And before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories. After my divorce, I felt like my whole world had fallen apart. I was suddenly a single mom with 2 little kids who needed me more than ever. Jimmy and Emma were just 8 at the time, innocent, full of love, and completely unaware of how heavy life had suddenly become for me. Working as a pediatric nurse meant 12-hour shifts, late nights, and endless exhaustion. I used to come home so tired that even cooking dinner felt impossible. I wanted to be a good mom, but I also needed help, badly. That's when my parents stepped in. They told me, "Jenny, move in with us. You won't have to struggle alone." And honestly, it felt like a blessing. I thought, maybe this is our fresh start. I packed up our little apartment, held Jimmy and Emma's hands, and we walked into my parents' house with hope in our hearts. I believed this was the new beginning we desperately needed. Looking back now, I had no idea that this decision would change everything, and not in the way I expected. Life as a single mom was not easy, not even a little. Every morning, I woke up before the sun, got Jimmy and Emma ready for school, and then rushed to the hospital for my 12-hour nursing shift. By the time I came home, my feet were aching, my back felt broken, and all I wanted was to lie down. But then I'd see my twins, running toward me with their little arms wide open. And in that moment, no matter how tired I was, I felt like the luckiest mom in the world. My parents helped too. They would pick the kids up from school, make them snacks, and sometimes even tuck them into bed when I was late. For the first time in a long time, I thought, maybe things are finally okay. Still, deep down I carried this guilt. I worried, am I missing out on their childhood? Do they feel I'm not around enough? Those thoughts broke my heart. For a while, life felt peaceful. Jimmy and Emma finally started smiling more. They loved being at Grandma and Grandpa's house. There was a big backyard where they could play tag, ride their bikes, and chase butterflies. Sometimes, I would come home late at night and peek into their room. I'd see them sleeping so peacefully, and it gave me a sense of comfort. I told myself, yes, Jenny, you made the right choice. This is a safe home for them. My parents seemed happy too. They spoiled the twins with cookies after school, helped them with homework, and even cheered at Jimmy's little soccer games. For the first time after my divorce, I felt like we were almost a family again. I remember one Sunday evening. We all had dinner together, laughing, telling stories. Emma sat on Grandpa's lap, and Jimmy was showing Grandma a magic trick with cards. My heart was so full in that moment, I thought, maybe the worst is behind us. Maybe we are healing. But I didn't know then that this calm was only temporary. A storm was waiting for us, one that would change everything I thought I knew about my parents' love. The day my brother Tom and his wife Melissa had their baby boy, everything changed. At first, I was so happy for them. A baby is always a blessing, right? I remember holding that tiny little boy for the first time, and my heart melted. He was so small, so innocent. And I thought, this child will grow up surrounded by love. But slowly, I started noticing something. different. My parents looked at him in a way I had never seen before. Their eyes lit up every time he was around, like he was the most precious thing in the whole world. Of course, grandparents love all their grandkids, but with him, it felt stronger. Too strong. When Jimmy and Emma tried to show Grandma their drawings, she barely looked. When they asked Grandpa to play, he would say, "Not now. I'm busy with the baby." At first, I told myself, "Jenny, don't overthink it. They're just excited. It'll balance out." But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, I could see the shift clearly. Jimmy and Emma, my sweet twins who once felt so loved in that house, were slowly fading into the background. And my parents? They didn't even notice the hurt in their little eyes. It started small, little things that maybe others wouldn't notice, but as a mother, I felt every bit of it. One afternoon, Jimmy came running to Grandma with a big smile, holding his drawing of a rocket. He was so proud, he said, "Grandma, look, I made this for you." She glanced at it for half a second, nodded, and then turned straight back to the baby, cooing and laughing like he was the only one in the room. Jimmy's smile faded. I saw it. My heart broke right there. Then Emma. Oh, my sweet Emma. She loved singing. One evening, she stood in the living room, singing her favorite song, hoping Grandma and Grandpa would clap. But instead, Grandpa shushed her, saying, "Don't make noise, the baby is sleeping." Her little face dropped, and she quietly walked away. I can still see her eyes that night, so full of sadness, like she was asking me, "Mommy, why am I not enough?" Every day it got worse. New toys for the baby, praise for every little thing he did, even just crawling on the floor. Meanwhile, my kids were ignored, like they were invisible. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my parents and say, "Don't you see? These are your grandchildren too. They need you. They need your love." But I stayed quiet, telling myself maybe things would change. Deep down, though, I knew. My children were slowly being pushed out of their own grandparents' hearts. Jimmy and Emma's birthday was always my favorite day of the year. Every year, I made sure they felt special. Balloons, a cake, even if it was small. It was filled with love. This year, they turned 10. A big milestone. Double digits. They were so excited. For weeks, they talked about the party, about the cake they wanted, about how Grandma and Grandpa would celebrate with them. But when the day came, it didn't feel like their birthday at all. Grandma and Grandpa barely said happy birthday. There was no cake from them, no balloons, no hugs filled with joy. Instead, all the attention went to the baby. He had just learned to walk, and everyone was clapping and cheering for him like it was the biggest event of the year. I watched my kids sit quietly at the table, their little smiles fading more and more. Emma whispered to me, "Mommy, did they forget?" And Jimmy? He tried to act brave, but I saw the tears in his eyes. That night, after everyone went to bed, I found Jimmy and Emma curled up together, holding the tiny cupcakes I had bought for them. Just 2 little candles. No party, no gifts from their grandparents, no celebration. I sat beside them, holding them close, and promised, "I will never forget you. I will always make you feel special, even if no one else does." And as I whispered those words, my heart shattered into a million pieces. Because the truth was clear. My parents had already replaced them in their hearts. After their birthday, things only got worse. My parents started treating my twins so differently, like they didn't even belong in the house anymore. Jimmy loved running around the living room, playing with his toy cars. But now, every time he made the slightest noise, Grandpa would yell, "Stop it, you'll wake the baby." Jimmy's little face would drop, and he'd quietly push his cars into a corner. Emma loved helping in the kitchen. She once spilled a little juice on the table, and Grandma snapped at her, saying she was careless. But when the baby threw his food on the floor, everyone laughed. They called it cute. The unfairness cut so deep. My kids were being punished for just being kids, while the baby could do no wrong. One evening, Jimmy was building a Lego tower. He worked so hard on it, piece by piece. But the baby crawled over and knocked it down. Jimmy cried, "Grandma, he broke it." Do you know what she said? She scolded Jimmy. She told him, "Don't be selfish. He's just a baby." I stood there frozen, watching my son's heart break. He didn't say a word after that. He just walked away with tears in his eyes. That night, Emma whispered to me in bed, "Mommy, why are we always the bad ones?" And I had no answer, because deep down, I was asking myself the same thing. Why were my children treated like strangers in their own grandparents' home? One evening, after a long 12-hour shift, I came home completely drained. All I wanted was to hug Jimmy and Emma, eat dinner together, and put the day behind us. But when I walked in, the house was tense. My parents were angry, and my twins sat quietly in the corner, their little heads bowed down like they had done something terrible. I asked, "What happened?" Grandma's voice was sharp. She said, "Your kids are too loud, too messy, too much. This isn't working, Jenny. You need to find another place to live." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My heart dropped to the floor. Leave? After everything we had been through, after all the times I thought they were helping us. They wanted us gone. I looked at Jimmy and Emma. My babies. Jimmy's eyes were red from crying, and Emma clutched her little stuffed bunny so tight, like it was the only safe thing she had left. And then Emma whispered, barely audible, "Mommy, do we have to leave?" I broke inside. Every piece of me shattered. How could my own parents, my children's grandparents, choose one grandchild and throw the others away like they didn't matter? I wanted to scream, to fight, to beg them to see what they were doing. But deep down, I knew the truth. They had already made their choice. And it wasn't us. That night was one of the hardest nights of my life. After my parents told us to leave, I tucked Jimmy and Emma into bed, but I could see they were broken inside. Jimmy looked at me with his big brown eyes, filled with tears he was trying so hard to hide. He asked softly, "Mom, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love us anymore?" I froze. My throat tightened. How could I explain something so cruel to a 10-year-old? How could I tell my children that love was being measured, compared, that they were losing in a game they never chose to play? Emma hugged me tight, her little voice trembling as she whispered, "Did we do something wrong? If we're good, will they love us again?" Those words shattered me. No child should ever have to question if they are worthy of love. No child should ever feel second best. I held both of them close, kissed their foreheads, and with tears streaming down my face, I told them, "No, my loves, you did nothing wrong. You are perfect just the way you are. If anyone can't see that, then it's their loss, not yours." But deep inside, I was drowning in guilt and anger. Guilt, because I had brought them into this house thinking it was safe. And anger, because the people who should have loved them the most had made them feel unwanted in their own family. The next day, after dropping Jimmy and Emma at school, I sat in my car and just cried. I felt so lost, so helpless. I didn't know where to go or what to do. That's when my friend Sarah called. She's been my best friend since high school. She could hear it in my voice the second I said hello. She asked, "Jenny, what's wrong?" And I broke. I told her everything. How my parents were treating the twins. How they asked us to leave. How my kids cried, asking why they weren't loved. Every word felt heavier, but I poured it all out, Sarah listened quietly, and then she said something I'll never forget. "Jenny, your kids don't need perfect grandparents. They need you, just you. And you're already giving them more love than anyone else ever could." I sobbed hearing that. Because deep down, I knew she was right. I was so focused on trying to keep my parents happy, I forgot that my only real job was to protect my children's hearts. Sarah held my hand and said, "You're stronger than you think, and you will get through this. One day, Jimmy and Emma will thank you for walking away from people who couldn't see their worth." For the first time in weeks, I felt a little hope. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. That night, after putting Jimmy and Emma to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, but my mind was loud, full of pain, anger, and fear. I kept seeing my children's faces. Jimmy asking, "Why don't they love us?" And Emma whispering, "Did we do something wrong?" Those questions tore me apart. I knew then. I couldn't let them stay in this house any longer. So I grabbed a notebook and started writing. I wrote down every shift I could take at the hospital, every extra hour I could work. I calculated the bills, groceries, rent, trying to figure out how we could survive on our own. It scared me. The numbers didn't add up easily. I knew it would mean sleepless nights, working more than I already did and living with very little. But when I looked at that page, I told myself, my kids are worth every sacrifice. I promised Jimmy and Emma that one day soon, they would have a home where they felt safe, loved, and wanted, every single day. No more being compared, no more being pushed aside. I wiped my tears, closed my notebook, and whispered to myself, "Jenny, you can do this. You have to. For them." That was the night I made the decision. We were going to leave, no matter how hard it would be. Just when I thought I was all alone in this, something happened that I didn't expect. One afternoon, my brother Tom came over. I braced myself, thinking he'd defend our parents like always. But instead, his face looked troubled. He sat down and quietly said, "Jenny, I've been watching how Mom and Dad treat your kids, and I can't stay quiet anymore." I was shocked. This was his baby they were spoiling. I didn't expect him to see what was happening. But he did. He told me how he noticed Jimmy trying to talk to Grandpa, only to be ignored. How Emma's smile would fade when Grandma pushed her aside for the baby. And then he said something that broke me. "Jenny, it's not fair. Your kids deserve love too. They're amazing, and they shouldn't feel invisible in their own grandparents' home." Tears filled my eyes. For the first time, someone else in the family finally said the truth out loud. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. My kids were being hurt, and someone else finally saw it too. Tom squeezed my hand and said, "Whatever you decide, I'll stand with you. You and the twins don't deserve this." In that moment, I felt a flicker of strength. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. Maybe, just maybe, someone in my family still cared enough to stand by us. Not long after, the truth finally came out, and it cut me deeper than I ever imagined. One evening, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. They didn't know I was standing just around the corner. My mom's voice was sharp. She said, "Tom's son is our real future. He'll carry the family name, those twins. They're just Jenny's kids. They're not the same." I felt my whole body go numb. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. Did she really just say that? My children, my babies, reduced to just Jenny's kids? Then my dad added, "We have to focus on the boy. He's the heir, the others. Well, they'll manage somehow." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run in there and demand how they could speak about Jimmy and Emma like that. As if they were less. As if they didn't matter. But instead, I stood frozen, my tears falling silently. In that moment, I finally understood. It wasn't about mistakes or noise or being children. It was about bloodlines, about carrying a last name. My parents had chosen. And in their eyes, my kids would never be enough. I went to my room, closed the door, and held Jimmy and Emma so tight they could hardly breathe. I whispered, "You are my everything. You are not less than anyone. And I promise, I will never let anyone make you feel unwanted again." That night, something inside me broke. But at the same time, something new was born. A fire, a strength, a decision. I knew what I had to do. After hearing those words from my parents, I couldn't look at them the same way again. Every time I saw their faces, I remembered what they said, that Jimmy and Emma weren't enough, that only the baby mattered. For days, I cried in silence. I didn't want my twins to see my pain, but kids are smart. They feel everything. Jimmy would quietly put his little hand on mine, like he was trying to give me strength. Emma would hug me tighter at night, whispering, "Mommy, don't be sad." And that's when I realized I couldn't stay here any longer. This house was no longer a home. It was a place of pain, of rejection, of broken love. So one evening, I sat my kids down. My voice was shaking, but I tried to smile. I told them, "We're going to find a new home, a place where we can laugh, where no one makes you feel unwanted. It won't be easy, but we'll be free." Jimmy's eyes lit up with a small spark of hope. Emma whispered, "Just us, Mommy?" And I nodded. "Yes, baby, just us. And that's enough." For the first time in weeks, I saw a real smile on their faces. And in that moment, I knew I was making the right choice. Walking away from my parents was not just about leaving their house. It was about choosing peace over pain, love over rejection, and showing my kids that they were worth everything. A few weeks later, we packed our bags. It wasn't much, just some clothes, a few toys, and the memories we carried in our hearts. Leaving that house felt heavy, but at the same time, it felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders. We moved into a small apartment. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Just ours. The first night, I cooked us spaghetti. We sat on the floor, eating from paper plates because we hadn't unpacked yet. Jimmy laughed when the noodles slipped from his fork, and Emma giggled so hard she almost fell over. For the first time in so long, their laughter filled the room. There were no harsh words, no favoritism, no feeling invisible. Just love. Pure love. Before bed, we lit 2 small candles on cupcakes, our little tradition. And I told them, "This is our new beginning. Here, you will always be seen. You will always be loved. You will always matter." Jimmy hugged me tight and whispered, "Mommy, this feels like home." And Emma, with her sleepy little smile, said, "I'm happy again." That night, as I watched my twins drift off to sleep in our new place, I realized something. Home isn't about big houses or even about family by blood. Home is where love lives. And as long as I had Jimmy and Emma by my side, I had everything I would ever need.